begin, we need to discuss documented perceptions of mental health issues within high schools. Mental health has not always been a recognized factor in the school environment, making it necessary to understand its prevalence today. Between 12 and 22% of all youngsters under age 18 are in need of services for mental, emotional, or behavioral problems, as stated by Adelman. Adelman also notes that well over 50% of their students manifest significant learning, behavior, and emotional problems. With these findings, research revolving around mental health needs have become more critical and diverse. This has led to significant advancements in the development of evidence-based educational and psychosocial learning interventions and strategies for youth with emotional and behavioral disorders, as stated by Kutaj. These insights have also begun to involve the teacher and school counselors' perceptions regarding effectively helping students who may struggle with mental health issues. According to Kenneth Bentz, the teacher plays an instrumental role in the socialization of children, influencing their cognitive and emotional development. Teachers are culture carriers. Kutaj, however, believes that while teachers and school staff often receive some type of training related to mental health, several studies continue to document the need to improve the information and training provided to teachers in order to increase mental health literacy. These statements call attention to the integral role of the teacher in a student's day and how they contribute to addressing an adolescent's mental health. The perceptions coming from students and teachers are essential to inspect when addressing mental health in schools. Wood explores the topic of student self-disclosures regarding mental illnesses. Wood states that students' mental health self-disclosures in the classroom may present opportunities for learning, but they may also incite concern, misinformation, and disruption. Along with the concern of the repercussions of the classroom environments, there is a concern for students' perceptions towards other peers. Wood makes a note of this, saying that many of the students reported that they felt discomfort after hearing someone disclose mental health concerns. This concern emphasizes the importance of counselors and teachers in handling the discussion of mental health with students. By being apt to student mental health concerns, teachers and counselors can develop a more meaningful and advantageous relationship. Well-developed relationships between teachers and counselors with students serve as a training ground for higher achievement and better development based on their perceptions. Coney begins to dissect how their perceptions towards students influence a teacher's role. In relation to students, teachers' perceptions are related to their teaching behavior. Differences between teachers and students' perceptions thus imply that their behaviors are likely to be incongruent and not directed at the same goals. Coney notes how these varying goals may be helpful by saying that identifying profiles of differences in perceptions enables teachers to better identify students who might be at risk for destructive congruence or destructive friction. They can adapt their instruction. While teachers adapting and assisting students with mental health related challenges would be ideal, the variance of teacher and counselor perceptions make for a more significant challenge. Roser and Midley support this when they address the impact on students of teachers who feel burdened, stating that students on average reported significantly more negative feelings associated with schools, such as frustration and anger, the negative school effect, lower feelings of personal self-esteem, and lower feelings of academic efficacy than students in classroom with teachers who felt less burdened. The burden teachers feel is reflected on their students, resulting in a negative impact on their health and the school environment. Rozier and Midley elaborate on this, saying that about 2/3 of the regular classroom teachers in their study reported feeling somewhat to very overwhelmed by the mental health needs of their students. Rozier and Midley believe that providing teachers with strategies that involve student mental health and academic needs may be the best course of action for helping with the burden of students. However, this is not the only way to help with students' mental health needs. While it appears teachers would have the most obvious impact on their students' well-being, the literature is still mixed regarding who is in the best position to address the mental health needs of students in schools, according to Carlson and Keyes. Carlson and Keyes expand on this, noting that school counselors are in the ideal position in terms of access to and identification of students in need. However, job descriptions, responsibilities, and duties, and large student-to-school counselor ratios limit the amount of time school counselors can give to students with ongoing mental health needs. This large ratio makes it difficult for counselors to help every student in need while still completing their full role breadth, which brings in the question of how beneficial they can be. Teachers also suffer from this role breadth problem, finding it burdensome to handle their students' mental health as well as their instruction, classroom environment, grading, and more. In a survey conducted by Carlson and Keyes, they discovered that 88% of survey participants reported that they do not have enough time to provide needed services to the students they serve because of demands placed on them by the needs of the setting. Porter states that in the beginning of the school-based movement, clinicians welcomed by school personnel as resources to complement or enhance the services provided by the school social workers and school counselors. Porter believes this collaborative relationship between counselors and outside mental health professionals is ideal and the best for students. Porter also notes that schools are in need of myriad services in order to address the emotional, behavioral, and social needs of their student body, and the collaborative partnerships of the schools and mental health agencies appear to be a step in the right direction. While Porter believes this is a step in the right direction, they mention a confounding factor to the actual integration of outside mental health professionals in schools. They state that during the past 30 years, monies for general support of mental health have decreased significantly. Most state and federal funding for supportive services was often mandated to poor preschool and special education population, meaning that schools most likely don't have the necessary funding required to make outside mental health professionals in schools a reality. This research has prompted me to ask not if outside mental health professionals are beneficial, but how their effectiveness may change due to the perceptions of the counselors and teachers within schools. Before expanding on my gap and for the purpose of my research, I would like to define several key terms that relate to my research. The first term is an acronym created for my paper, which is OMHP, standing for Outside Mental Health Professionals. Following that, I define assisting as a teacher's ability to help students with any mental health needs. Lastly, I define adjusting as a teacher's ability to change their own classrooms in a way that helps with students' mental health needs. Now that my key terms are established, I can expand on my gap. By understanding teachers' perceptions in select large urban high schools in a metropolitan area, the possible implementation of outside mental health professionals can be expanded upon to fit into other high schools of North America. This may also help create an understanding for teachers and counselor role breadth and burden in large urban high schools. With firsthand experience as a student with mental health related accommodations that interfere with my school life, I understand that the roles addressing mental health within schools is limited. This is why I decided to ask, how do teachers perceive the use of mental health professionals to aid students within the school environment? Now that my context, key terms, and research question is established, I will reveal my method of research. To conduct my research, I decided to use a 4-point Forrest-Likert scale survey consisting of 16 questions. By using a 4-point Forrest-Likert scale as opposed to a 5-point scale, I was able to eliminate neutral answers to provide definitive responses from participants. The Forrest-Likert scale I used is as follows: strongly disagree, disagree, agree, and strongly agree. The survey consists of 16 questions, with 15 of the questions using the 4-point Forrest-Likert scale. Question 1 serves as a confirmatory question of the participation for the participants. Participants are given the opportunity to quit the survey at any time. The participants consist of teachers from urban high schools in a large metropolitan area. The remaining 15 questions of the survey are grouped into 3 sections, all pertaining similar questions aimed at 3 different groups of people that can be involved in handling student mental health in schools. Group 1 consists of questions for teachers and addresses their perceptions towards helping students and the training they have received to do so. This is done in the first person to set the tone of the survey, as the goal of the survey is to collect the perceptions of the teachers themselves. The second group of questions are in regard to how these high school teachers interpret the role breadth of counselors. Group 3 contains similar questions but are aimed at the teachers' perceptions towards outside mental health professionals. By interpreting the teachers' perceptions towards both counselors and outside mental health professionals, I hope to understand why they may answer in favor of one over the other. For my results, the questions and graphs are grouped by the type of question asked rather than who the question is directed towards. The first set of graphs and questions addresses the perceptions teachers have towards assisting students with mental health related accommodations, as well as adjusting the classroom settings to better fit their needs. The second set of graphs and questions regards teachers' perceptions of the necessary training helping with mental health related issues of students. These questions are in regard to their own training as well as for counselors and outside mental health professionals. The third set of graphs and questions asks for the perceptions of teachers towards the inclusion of outside mental health professionals in schools. In the first group of graphs, teachers were asked to respond to their comfort in adjusting their classroom to mental health needs and their comfort in counselors adjusting their classroom settings. Teachers responded positively, a 93.75%, to adjusting their own classroom, but responded negatively, 86.25%, to counselors adjusting their classrooms. In the next set of graphs, teachers responded to if they believe they have the necessary training to help students with mental health needs, as well as if they believe counselors and outside mental health professionals have the necessary training. While teachers disagreed with having the necessary training, a 63.75% negative response, they believed that outside mental health professionals were the most adequately trained, 95% positive response, followed by counselors having adequate training with an 86.25% positive response. Following that set of graphs, the next set asked teachers their opinion towards increasing the number of counselors in schools. Teachers strongly disagreed with increasing counselors, a 62.50%. Teachers also strongly disagreed with outside mental health professionals impeding on the roles of counselors, believing that they would not affect the role that counselors have in schools, a 92.50% response. Now that I have gone over my results, I will discuss some of the trends I have found. Overall, the trends that I noticed are, by relying on counselors, teachers feel that they would impede on their own personal classroom settings. However, teachers are comfortable with adjusting their own classroom when helping accommodate students with mental health needs. Teachers don't believe they are trained in relation to mental health needs of students, but counselors and outside mental health professionals are, making them more equipped to actually help with those needs. Teachers also believe that rather than increasing counselors, outside mental health professionals should be implemented into schools to assist counselors with their roles. After discussing some of my trends within my results, I came up with an overall trend of my research. Teachers feel that their only source of control over helping students with their mental health needs is in their individual classrooms. Overall, teachers believe that the help and resources should be coming from counselors and outside mental health professionals rather than from them due to their lack of necessary training when compared to counselors and outside mental health professionals. Since teachers don't believe that outside mental health professionals impede on the role of counselors, the best solution would be to implement outside mental health professionals into schools to assist counselors in helping students with mental health needs. Despite my best intentions, I found some limitations of my study. A large limitation of the research would be the phrasing of the questions in the survey. It may not be clear what the difference would be between assisting and adjusting. Another limitation that may be considered would be teachers not adequately understanding the role breadth of counselors and outside mental health professionals. Response rate for the survey only covered a small sample of high school teachers. Besides this, location was not recorded and may have an unpredictable effect on the experiment results. Besides my overall trends and limitations, I created some implications for future research that could be done. A future research avenue to explore can be expanding the audience to include the perceptions of counselors and outside mental health professionals eligible to work in high schools. By adjusting the survey for each party, the perceptions of counselors and outside mental health professionals towards themselves as well as the other two parties may provide a better understanding of how outside mental health professionals can be implemented into schools or if the number of counselors needs increased. Another avenue can be to research the perceptions of teachers from middle schools or colleges. By sending out the same or similar questions to these groups of teachers, it could be best understood where outside mental health professionals or increased counselors is needed. Besides these, research can also be done in regard to how well teachers understand the role of counselors and outside mental health professionals. This can create an understanding of why the teachers believe outside mental health professionals would be more vital than an increase in counselors. Thank you for coming to my presentation. I am now ready to take any questions you guys might have in regard to my research.
How did your initial exploration of the scholarly conversation lead to your final research question or project goal?
My initial exploration actually covered the perceptions students have towards how their mental health affects their school environment. But since I was a vulnerable audience, I had to change the scope of my research. While I was still interested in addressing mental health, I decided to gather perceptions from teachers since they are not a vulnerable audience and that I can more adequately address how mental health might be addressed in schools rather than how it impacts school environment. Yes.
How do your findings provide directions for future research in the field?
My research covered the perceptions teachers have towards outside mental health professionals and counselors. And so since my research covered, or since my research found that outside mental health professionals would be the most beneficial according to teachers, this can actually implement a long-term research project over including outside mental health professionals and their actual impact on the school environment.
If you could revisit your research process, what would you do differently and why?
Something I would do differently is rephrasing some of my questions since I had a lot of confusion between adjusting and assisting when in the survey. I think clearing up some of those infrequencies would probably help with the teachers' perceptions and how they actually answer